I still remember that day like it was carved into my mind with fire. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and the salty breeze from the ocean carried a strange chill that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The little beach town seemed quiet, almost too quiet, as if it was holding its breath for something terrible to happen. The streets were mostly empty, with only a few cars passing slowly, tires crunching against the worn asphalt. The seagulls circled lazily above the shore, their cries sharp and lonely, echoing against the soft lapping of the waves. The smell of damp sand and seaweed mixed with the faint scent of Mom's perfume from earlier that morning. That morning she had been humming softly, arranging flowers in the living room, completely unaware that her world was about to shift. He stood in the doorway, heart pounding, gripping the keys in his hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The beach house loomed behind him, its weathered wood panels gray from years of sun and salt. The windows reflecting the stormy sky like mirrors holding back secrets. For weeks he had been planning this, telling himself it was the only way. But as he stared at the house, doubt began to creep in. Memories of his childhood here surfaced without warning. Running barefoot across the warm sand, laughing as waves crashed over him, Mom chasing him with a towel and laughing too. The smell of fresh-baked cookies coming from the kitchen. The way her eyes sparkled when she told stories about the past. Selling this house was supposed to be simple, practical even, but now, standing there, felt like a traitor to his own past. The house itself seemed alive that day. The wooden steps creaked under his weight as he climbed up to the porch, each groan echoing like a warning. The wind picked up, rattling the shutters, making the old wooden door sway slightly on its hinges. He could feel it in his chest, a strange tightness, a mixture of fear, guilt, and anticipation. Mom had no idea what he was about to tell her, and that terrified him more than anything. He had imagined her reaction hundreds of times, but reality was always sharper, colder, and heavier than imagination. The thought of seeing her face twist into shock, confusion, maybe even anger, made him swallow hard and close his eyes for a brief moment, trying to steady his trembling hands. When she walked into the room, humming a soft tune, the light falling over her golden hair like a halo, he felt his resolve weaken. She looked so small and fragile there, holding a vase of fresh flowers she had just picked from the garden, completely unaware of the storm about to break in her life. He cleared his throat, trying to sound calm, casual even, but his voice caught when he spoke. "Mom, we're going tomorrow," he said, and the words felt heavy in his mouth, like stones rolling over each other. Her head tilted slightly, a soft smile on her lips. "Going where, dear?" she asked, and the warmth in her voice made the guilt twist tighter inside him. He took a deep breath, forcing the words out. I sold your beach house." He watched her face as if in slow motion. First her smile faltered, confusion clouding her expression. Then her eyes widened, the air around her seeming to freeze for a brief moment. The vase slipped slightly from her hands, and she caught it just in time, her fingers trembling. "What?" she whispered, voice barely audible, as if the very idea was impossible to process. The room seemed to shrink around them, the ticking of the old wall clock growing louder, each tick a hammer against his chest. He tried to explain, his voice shaky but determined. "Mom, I thought it was time. We can't keep it forever. And I thought this was the best choice." But no matter how carefully he chose his words, he could see the hurt, the disbelief, the silent accusation in her eyes. It was like he had reached into her chest and yanked out something precious and irreplaceable. She didn't speak for a long time, just stared at him, her hands clutching the vase tightly, knuckles white. The wind outside picked up again, rattling the shutters, and a cold drop of rain tapped against the window, as if nature itself was mourning. Then she spoke, her voice quivering but controlled. You sold it." "Without telling me." Her words were simple, but the weight behind them was crushing. He nodded, feeling each word like a stone in his stomach. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said. I thought it was for the best." But his words felt hollow, even to him. Mom took a step back, almost as if she needed distance, and looked out the window at the darkening sky, her profile outlined against the storm. For the best. She repeated softly, and for a moment he thought she might laugh, cry, or even scream. The tension in the room was unbearable. The wind howled through the cracks in the windows, carrying the scent of the ocean. And somewhere far off, a dog barked, lonely and anxious. He wanted to reach out to her, to take her hand and make everything okay, but something stopped him. He realized that no matter how much he tried, this moment had a gravity of its own, pulling them into a space where neither of them could move freely. Secrets hung between them like a dense fog. And he could feel the edges of his decision cutting sharper than he had anticipated. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. Mom sat silently, eyes fixed on the waves crashing against the shore in the distance. He could see the muscles in her jaw tighten, the way she pressed her lips together to keep from speaking. And he knew she was struggling to hold back a storm inside. The room was quiet except for the ticking clock and the occasional creak of the floorboards. He wished he could rewind time, could undo the choice, could step back and change everything, but he knew he couldn't. All he could do was watch and wait. The weight of his secret pressing down on him like the storm clouds outside. Finally, she turned to him, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Tomorrow? You say we're leaving tomorrow?" she asked, her voice trembling. He nodded slowly, unsure of how she would react next. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unbearable. He could hear the faint whisper of the wind, carrying voices of the past he had almost forgotten. Memories of laughter, of family dinners, of quiet nights by the fire. And then a strange feeling crept over him, a sense that this was only the beginning. That selling the house had unlocked something he couldn't see yet. Something waiting in the shadows. The storm outside began to grow stronger. The wind lashed against the walls, rain splattering against the windows in sharp, erratic bursts. The lights flickered for a moment, and in that brief darkness, he could swear he saw something move in the corner of the room, a shadow he hadn't noticed before. His heart skipped a beat. Was it just a trick of the light? Or had something else been awakened by his decision? Mom's eyes darted toward the corner too, and for a moment, they shared a look of unspoken fear. Neither of them spoke, but the air was thick with the promise of events yet to come. Secrets yet to be revealed, and a tension that made it impossible to breathe freely. And then, just as he thought he could not bear another second of the silence, a loud crash came from upstairs, like furniture toppling over. Mom jumped, a sharp gasp escaping her lips, and he bolted to the staircase, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. "Mom, it's okay, I'll check," he called, but the house seemed too big, too silent, and the storm outside roared louder, drowning out his words. Step by step, he climbed each creak under his feet, echoing through the empty hallways. The door to the attic was slightly ajar, swinging slowly as if moved by invisible hands. He reached for it, and the air felt colder here, heavier, as if carrying whispers from the past. He pushed the door open slowly, peering inside. Dust hung in the air, catching what little light the storm let through the windows. Boxes of old memories were stacked haphazardly, some fallen, some intact. But at the far end of the attic, something caught his small handwritten note lying on the floor. The handwriting was familiar, but he couldn't place it immediately. He picked it up, heart thudding, and read the words that made him freeze. The note was not old, not from years ago, it was recent, and it said simply, "I know what you did." His blood ran cold. Someone knew. Someone had been watching. And in that moment, he realized that selling the house had been only the first step in a story far bigger, far darker than he had ever imagined. The wind screamed outside, the storm growing wilder. And he knew, with a sinking feeling, that nothing would ever be the same again. The sound of footsteps echoed behind him, slow and deliberate. He spun around, but the attic was empty. His heart raced, sweat prickling his skin. "Mom," he called, but only the storm answered. The note trembled in his hand, a warning and a mystery all at once. And in that instant, he understood that the day had begun with a lie. But it was about to unfold into something much more dangerous. Something that would test the very limits of trust. family, and courage. He swallowed hard, glancing back toward the staircase, toward the storm, toward the life he had known. And then he heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible over the wind. "You shouldn't have done that." The hair on his arm stood up. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm he now felt inside. And somewhere deep down, he knew that tomorrow, when he had told his mom the truth, nothing would ever be simple again. The storm had not stopped. If anything, it had grown stronger, as though the sky itself was angry at the secret that had been revealed. Inside the beach house, the wind whipped through the cracks in the old wooden walls, rattling picture frames and shaking the windows. The faint scent of salt and wet sand mingled with the lingering smell of Mom's flowers, creating a strange, almost sickly sweetness that seemed to hang in the air. He stood at the top of the attic stairs, the note still trembling in his hand, feeling the weight of every memory the house had held for years pressing down on him. Each sound, the creak of the floorboards, the distant crash of the waves, the howl of the wind, felt louder than it should, sharper, almost like a warning. Mom's soft voice called up from the living room below, trembling with confusion and fear. "Are you up there? What's going on?" She sounded small, vulnerable, and for a moment he wished he could climb into the past and undo everything. Return to when the house had been safe and full of laughter. But that was impossible. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves, and whispered, "I'm fine, Mom. Just checking the attic." But the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. He knew that whatever had left the note, whoever had written it, was already closer than he wanted to admit, step by step. He descended from the attic, the note clutched tightly against his chest. Each creak of the staircase felt like an announcement to whoever or whatever was in the house with him. He reached the living room and found Mom sitting on the couch, knees pulled close to her chest, her eyes wide and searching. I don't understand," she said, voice shaking. "Who would write that? Who knows?" Her hands trembled slightly, fingers twisting together as she looked around the room as if expecting someone to jump out at any second. He wanted to tell her he didn't know, that he wasn't sure what was happening, but even saying that felt dangerous. Something in the air told him that the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm about to hit inside. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into brief darkness. Mom gasped and clutched her chest, eyes darting around. The wind outside seemed to grow louder, rattling the windows so violently that he feared they might shatter. Then, in the brief quiet that followed, he heard it, a faint scratching sound from the hallway leading to the bedrooms. It was slow, deliberate, soft, but unmistakable. His pulse jumped, every nerve in his body screaming at him to move, to run, to protect Mom. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice low, almost shaking. Mom nodded, biting her lip, silent and tense. He moved toward the hallway, cautiously trying to see in the dim light. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, turning corners into hiding places for unseen figures. The scratching sound came again, closer this time, almost like fingernails dragging across wood. He could feel a cold sweat running down his back. Whoever or whatever was in the house knew something, and the knowledge hung over them like a threat. He picked up a flashlight from the side table and flicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the worn wooden floorboards, the walls lined with family photos, each smiling face now seeming strange, almost alien in the trembling light. "Stay here, Mom," he said, trying to sound confident, though his heart pounded violently. She nodded, eyes wide, and whispered, "Be careful." He took slow, measured steps down the hallway. The scratching stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence. Then a cold draft hit his face, and the flashlight flickered. For a moment, he thought he saw a figure at the end of the hall, a shadow standing perfectly still. He froze, breath catching in his throat. His mind raced. Was it a trick of the storm, a shadow from the wind, or someone watching him, waiting? He stepped closer, the flashlight trembling slightly in his hands. The figure didn't move, and then, as he blinked, it vanished. He exhaled slowly, trying to convince himself it was nothing. But the note in his pocket burned against his chest. A reminder that someone was aware of the secret. Someone knew he had sold the house, and now they were sending warnings. The thought made his stomach twist, and he felt a pang of guilt for bringing Mom into this without warning. He turned to go back, only to hear a soft, almost whispering voice from the end of the hall. "You shouldn't have done that. It wasn't the wind this time." It was a human voice, or at least it sounded human. His pulse tripled, and he called out, "Who's there?" Silence followed. Mom's voice came again from the living room, shaky and worried. "Are you okay?" she asked. He turned to answer, but the whisper came again, closer this time, from behind him. "I see you." He spun around, flashlight shaking, but the hallway was empty. The shadows danced in the corners, making it impossible to tell what was real and what was not. He wanted to grab Mom and run, to lock the doors, to call the police, but he felt rooted to the spot, frozen by the sheer impossibility of understanding what was happening. Whoever it was had not revealed themselves fully. But the message was clear. They knew, they were watching, and they were dangerous. The rain pounded against the windows now, faster and harder, as if the storm had become a wall around them. The house groaned with every gust of wind, the old beams protesting, echoing through the empty spaces. He moved back toward the living room, every step careful and deliberate, trying not to alert the unseen presence. Mom watched him from the couch, her hands gripping the cushions tightly, eyes wide with fear. He handed her the flashlight, trying to offer comfort even as his own nerves threatened to collapse. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut with a deafening crash. Both of them jumped. The sound of the storm outside mixed with the slam inside, creating a deafening roar. He ran to the door, checking the locks, and found them intact. But the door handle was wet, streaked with something dark that he couldn't identify in the dim light. Panic surged in him, a tight, suffocating pressure in his chest. Someone had been there. Someone had come into the house while they were inside. The realization made him stumble back, breath quick and shallow. Mom clutched his arm, whispering, "What is happening?" He couldn't answer. There was no explanation, nothing that could make sense of the fear gnawing at them both. He thought of the note again, the single, chilling line, "I know what you did." The words felt alive, pulsing with intent, a warning of something much larger than selling the house. The presence in the house was no longer just a possibility. It was real, and it was close. He moved toward the stairs leading to the bedrooms, trying to check the rooms one by one. Hoping to find nothing, hoping that he was imagining things. But the house felt different now, hostile even. Each creak of the floorboards like a whisper of warning. As he approached the first bedroom, he noticed the window slightly open, though he was sure he had closed it earlier. The curtains fluttered violently in the wind, and the rain seeped in, cold drops landing on the hardwood floor. He shivered, glancing around. Was it the wind again, or had someone opened it? He tried to ignore the fear, telling himself he would check every room, keep Mom safe, find nothing, and everything would be fine. But the house seemed to resist that notion. The shadows lingered in corners. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly above them, though no one was there. Then, in the far corner of the hallway, he saw a small movement. Barely perceptible, but unmistakable. Something or someone was standing, watching. He froze, flashlight aimed, and the shadow darted behind the wall, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Mom's voice broke through, tight with fear. "Who's there?" He called back, but only the storm answered. The sense of being watched pressed in from all sides, cold and relentless. The note in his pocket felt heavier than ever, and he knew with a sick certainty that the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm inside the house, a storm that had only just begun. The house was no longer just a place of memories. It had become a trap, a cage filled with shadows and whispers. The storm outside raged on, rain striking the windows like fists, wind howling through the cracks and eaves. Each sound seemed amplified, every creak and groan of the old house magnified in the tense silence that followed. He could feel his heart hammering in his chest as he guided Mom to the kitchen, hoping to find some semblance of safety, some place where the shadows would not follow them. But the house had changed. It no longer felt familiar, the walls and corners seeming to twist and stretch in ways that made him uneasy. as if the rooms themselves were alive and aware of their secret. Mom sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea she hadn't drunk. Her face was pale, eyes wide and unblinking, staring toward the hallway as though expecting the unknown figure to appear again. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered, almost to herself. Her voice trembled, and he felt a lump in his throat. She was right. The beach house, which had been a sanctuary all their lives, had turned into a labyrinth of fear and doubt. He tried to reassure her to sound calm, but his own voice wavered. "Mom, I don't know what's happening either," he said. "But we'll get through this. I promise." The note in his pocket burned against his side as though urging him to act, to do something. He could not shake the feeling that the person who left it was inside the house, still watching. Every shadow seemed to twitch with life, every flicker of light a signal. He moved toward the hallway again, determined to check the rooms, to find some explanation. But the fear in his chest made his movements slow and careful. Each step he took made the floorboards creak ominously, echoing down the hall. He reached the first bedroom, pushing the door open slowly. The room was empty, but the bed was rumpled as if someone had lain there recently. The window was slightly open, rain dripping onto the floor, and a cold draft swirled around him. He shivered, feeling the icy fingers of fear creeping up his spine. He checked the second bedroom, finding it undisturbed, though the closet door was slightly ajar. The shadows inside it seemed to move in the dim light. He shone the flashlight carefully, but there was nothing there. Still, a sense of being watched pressed on him, heavy and suffocating. When he turned to leave the room, he heard a whisper, soft and almost melodic. Barely audible over the storm. "You can't hide." He froze, flashlight trembling in his hand, trying to locate the source. The walls seemed to close in, the storm outside pounding as if urging him to flee. He moved toward the master bedroom, the largest and oldest room in the house, where Mom kept all her personal belongings and memories. The door was unlocked, slightly swinging, though he remembered closing it earlier. A shiver ran down his spine as he entered, feeling the weight of countless memories pressing down on him. The room smelled faintly of old wood and lavender, a scent that had once brought comfort but now carried unease. He stepped cautiously toward the dresser, and that's when he saw ITN other note, pinned under a small paperweight with the same handwriting. "You thought you could hide it. You can't." His stomach twisted. Whoever was doing this knew him, knew the secret, and was not afraid to play with their fear. The house felt alive now, breathing around him, as if the walls themselves were conspiring against him. Mom's voice, distant but trembling, called from the kitchen again. "Are you okay?" he shouted, forcing a sense of calm into his voice. "I'm fine, Mom. Just checking everything." But the words sounded hollow, even to him. He knew that whatever had entered their home, whatever was aware of their actions, was far from finished. As he moved to leave the bedroom, sudden movement at the window caught his eye. He spun toward it and froze. A shadowy figure, blurred by the rain and darkness, darted past the glass, almost too fast to be human. His heart pounded violently, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Who's there?" he shouted, but the storm swallowed his voice. He pressed his ear to the window, trying to listen, but all he could hear was the howl of the wind and the pounding rain. It was as if the storm had become a wall, hiding the presence from him, teasing him with glimpses and whispers that made the fear grow unbearable. He moved quickly back to the hallway, flashlight trembling in his hand. Mom's hand on his shoulder startled him. She had followed him. Her grip was tight, desperate, and he felt the tension radiating off her like heat. "We need to leave," she said firmly, her voice stronger than before, yet still tinged with fear. He nodded, knowing she was right. But as he turned toward the front door, he realized something terrifying. The door was wide open. Not ajar, not slightly, but completely open. The storm had thrown it open, or perhaps it had been opened by someone or something inside. The rain poured in, soaking the wooden floor, and the wind made the house groan as though it were alive. He stepped forward cautiously, flashlight shaking, heart hammering, and peered outside. Nothing. The porch was empty. The beach silent except for the storm. But the note, the whispers, the shadows, they were all still inside. And he knew that leaving was not going to be simple. Someone had entered, someone new, and the storm had become a perfect cover for their plans. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage for an unknown danger. Each room a trap, each shadow a potential threat. Suddenly, sound came from the kitchen, a low thud, like something heavy hitting the floor. He spun toward the sound, pulling Mom close behind him. The kitchen lights flickered, casting the room in intermittent darkness. He could see nothing unusual at first, but then his eyes caught movement near the pantry. Something shifted there, just for a moment, like a shadow moving across the wall. His breath caught. "Mom, stay back," he whispered. She nodded, eyes wide, gripping his arm tightly. Step by step, he approached, flashlight illuminating the pantry door. The sound had stopped, leaving an oppressive silence that pressed down on them. He reached for the pantry door handle, trembling, and slowly pulled it open. The pantry was empty. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, and yet the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. He took a cautious step back, and that's when he noticed it. A small, dark footprint in the spilled sugar on the floor. Someone had been there, someone recent. His stomach churned, and he felt a cold dread seep into his bones. Whoever had done this, whoever had left the notes, was not playing games. They were here, inside the house, and they had been closer than he dared imagine. The wind screamed through the open door again, rattling the windows violently. Mom's voice was small but firm. "We have to leave now." He nodded, glancing toward the stairs. As they moved toward the front door, he heard a soft whisper, clear and deliberate. Coming from the dark hallway behind them, "You can't escape." He froze. The words cut through the storm, cold and unmistakable. His heart raced faster than ever. The house, the storm, the shadowy figure, the notes, all of it was converging. And in that instant, he knew with absolute certainty the secret of the beach house. The choice he had made had awakened something dangerous. Something that would not let them go so easily. The storm outside was relentless, each gust of wind shaking the beach house to its bones. Each sharp crack of thunder echoing like a gunshot in the dark. He held Mom close, both of them trembling, eyes darting to every shadow, listening to every sound. The open front door swayed violently with each blast of wind, letting in a cold, salty draft that cut through their clothes and settled in their bones. He tried to calm himself, tried to focus on a way out, but the sense of being hunted pressed down on him with every heartbeat. The note, still burning in his pocket, seemed to pulse as though demanding action, as though warning him that every second wasted brought them closer to danger. They moved slowly toward the door, shoes squelching in the rainwater pooled on the porch. The night seemed darker than it should have been, the clouds overhead hiding the moon, letting the storm paint the world in shadows. The wind carried whispers again, soft and eerie, almost human, echoing around them. He could not tell if it was in his mind or real. The hair on his arms stood on end as he glanced over his shoulder at the house, half expecting to see a shadow following them. Mom's hands gripped his arm so tightly that he could feel her fear, raw and unfiltered, and he felt a deep surge of protectiveness. Mixed with the guilt of bringing her into this nightmare, the beach stretched out before them. The sand dark and wet, the waves crashing violently against the shore. Each wave seemed to roar in anger, as though nature itself was warning them away. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his trembling legs, and scanned the area. Everything seemed empty, silent except for the storm. He felt for his phone in his pocket, only to realize it was dead. No signal, no way to call for help. He swallowed hard, realizing that if someone wanted to harm them, the house and the storm were perfect allies for hiding their presence. Each shadow seemed alive, each gust of wind a mask for something sinister. Then a sudden sound froze them both. A door upstairs banged violently, the sound echoing down to the porch. His pulse spiked. The storm couldn't have done that. Teat was too precise, too deliberate. He glanced at Mom, who was staring at the house, eyes wide, lips parted, frozen in fear. "We can't stay here," she whispered, voice trembling. He nodded, pulling her along, stepping off the porch onto the wet sand. Each step sank slightly into the soft, cold sand, making him aware of how exposed they were. Behind them, the house loomed, dark and imposing, like a fortress of memories, now turned hostile, as they moved along the shore. He noticed something strange. Footprints in the wet sand. Not just their own. Someone had been moving along the beach, coming closer and closer to the house. The prints were large, heavy, and irregular, disappearing and reappearing in the shadows. His heart raced. Whoever had left them was watching, following, waiting for the perfect moment. He looked to Mom, who flinched at the sight. And for the first time, he saw a quiet, burning anger in her eyes beneath the fear. She whispered, "Who would do this? Who would follow us?" He shook his head. He had no answer. He only knew that the notes, the shadows, the whispers, they were all connected. And they were being drawn into something far bigger than they could understand. The wind picked up again, carrying with it the distant sound of something crashing against the rocks. He froze, straining to hear, his teeth chattering. Then he saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the beach, partially obscured by darkness and rain. It was tall, motionless, and silent, facing the house. A chill ran down his spine. The figure did not move toward them, but the sheer presence, the deliberate stillness, felt threatening. He wanted to run to pull Mom away, but he realized that every movement could be noticed. Every misstep could alert the stranger. The storm masked many things, but it could not hide the sense of being hunted. The feeling that the night itself had become alive and malevolent. He gripped Mom's hand tightly, heart hammering. "We need to get to the road," he said, trying to force calm into his voice. But as they moved, the sand seemed to shift beneath them unnaturally, making it hard to keep steady. The waves crashed higher, sending spray into their faces, stinging their eyes. The figure on the beach did not move, but he felt its gaze, heavy and unrelenting, following their every step. The storm raged, masking the sounds of approaching footsteps, though he was not sure if they were real or imagined. Every instinct screamed danger. Every fiber of his being screamed to run faster. But the unknown stretched ahead like a trap. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the figure clearly for a brief second. He gasped. The figure was holding something in its hands, a long, dark object, sharp, reflecting the light. A sense of dread consumed him. Mom clutched his arm, trembling. "It's him," she whispered, fear and recognition blending in her voice. His mind raced. Who could it be? Who knew the secret of the beach house so intimately? And what did they want with them? The realization hit him hard. The storm had not just hidden the danger and brought it closer, right to the edge of the beach where they were exposed, powerless, and vulnerable. He looked around desperately for anything, a place to hide, a path to safety. But the beach stretched endlessly, black and wet, with nothing but waves and shadows. He considered going back to the house. But the thought of being inside while someone armed and knowing their secret lurked nearby was unbearable. They were trapped between the malevolent house behind them and the unknown figure before them. The wind whipped faster, rain lashing against their faces, making it hard to see, hard to breathe, and yet he could feel the presence of the stranger pressing down on them, closing in, patient, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A sudden, sharp sound behind them made them both spin around. The back door of the house slammed violently again, though they had not touched it. Then, in the faint light of the lightning, they saw the shadow of someone or something moving past the windows inside the house. The figure on the beach remained silent and unmoving, but the knowledge that they were surrounded, watched from multiple angles, sent a cold panic through him. He realized, with growing horror, that the notes, the whispers, the presence, they were not isolated incidents. They were part of a carefully orchestrated plan, a game being played. And they were the unwilling players. Mom gasped, voice tight with fear. "We have to get help. Someone—" But her words were swallowed by the roar of the storm. He felt helpless, trapped between the relentless storm, the hostile house, and the looming figure. Every decision carried risk, every second was dangerous. And then he noticed something, a faint flickering light inside the house, moving slowly along the hallway. Someone was inside. Someone was watching, waiting, and they knew exactly where he and Mom were. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his mind. He had to think, had to act, but the fear was paralyzing. The storm, the shadows, the figure, they were all part of a puzzle he could not yet see. He glanced at Mom, whose eyes were wide, filled with terror, yet a flicker of determination shone through. "We have to move," he said, gripping her hand. But as they stepped forward, the figure on the beach lifted its head slightly, and he could swear he saw a faint, almost cruel smile in the dim light. He knew, without a doubt, that the night was far from over. The storm, the house, the figure, they were all pieces of a plan that was closing in around them. And as the lightning flashed again, illuminating the beach and the dark house behind them, he realized with chilling clarity nothing would be the same again. The secret of the beach house, the lie he had told, had awakened forces he could not control, and the night was only beginning. The wind howled louder, carrying with it a biting chill that cut through their clothes and settled deep in their bones. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking them instantly, plastering their hair and clothes to their bodies. He held Mom's hand tightly, each squeeze meant to reassure her. But he could feel her trembling, her fear transferring to him in waves that made his stomach churn. The beach stretched endlessly in front of them, a wet black void. The waves crashing violently as if the ocean itself were trying to push them back toward the house. And behind them, the dark silhouette of the beach house seemed to leer at them, its windows flickering with faint shadows, each flicker a warning that danger lurked within. The figure on the beach did not move. It stood tall and still, watching them with an intensity that made their skin crawl. In the occasional flash of lightning, he could see the shape of the dark object it held, long, sharp, gleaming ominously. His heart hammered in his chest. He wanted to run, but he knew the sand made them slow and vulnerable. Mom whispered urgently, "We can't stay here. What do we do?" He shook his head, searching frantically for some path, some hiding place. But the beach offered nothing, only open space and vulnerability. And the storm offered nothing but chaos. Masking dangers he could not see, footsteps he could not hear, and shadows that seemed to stretch and move with a life of their own. He tried to think, to plan, but fear clouded his mind. The notes, the whispers, the shadows in the house, and now this figure, they were all connected. He was certain of it. He realized, in a cold, sinking way, that selling the beach house had not been a simple decision, not a practical one. It had awakened something, drawn attention to them in ways he could not comprehend. Every step he took seemed to echo too loudly. Every drop of rain hitting his face felt like a warning. He glanced at Mom, who was shivering, eyes wide and filled with terror. And he felt a surge of guilt so strong it almost made him stumble. He had brought her into this. He had promised to protect her, and now he feared he might fail. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder made them both flinch, and lightning illuminated the figure clearly for a split second. He gasped. The person or something was much closer than he had realized. They weren't just on the edge of the beach. They were moving, almost gliding through the sand, silent, deliberate. He could not make out the face, but he could feel its gaze, cold and calculating, measuring every move, waiting. A whisper carried on the wind reached his ears. "You can't hide. You can't escape." He swallowed hard, the words sinking into him like ice water. Mom clutched his arm, voice trembling. "We have to do something. Now." He nodded, and they turned, moving along the beach toward a faint light in the distance, the only sign of life beyond the storm. Perhaps a road, perhaps a safe place. Each step felt heavy, each heartbeat a warning that danger was closer than they realized. The sand shifted beneath their feet, uneven and slippery, making them stumble. The rain stung their faces, the wind pushed against them. and the shadowy figures seemed to mirror their movements, closing the distance almost imperceptibly. Then, something moved behind them, fast and silent. He spun around, heart racing, flashlight shaking in his hand. But there was nothing, only the storm, the house, the endless black sand, and the figure standing motionless again. He exhaled slowly, trying to convince himself it was just his imagination. But the footprints in the wet sand told a different story. Someone had been moving behind them, tracking them, silent and careful, leaving no sound but the impressions in the sand. His chest tightened. Whoever was doing this was patient, methodical, and dangerously close. Lightning flashed again, and he saw it clearly, another shadow closer now, lurking near a driftwood pile further down the beach. It was moving toward them, carefully, deliberately, as if testing their reactions. He pulled Mom behind a large rock, huddling close to her, trying to keep them hidden. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking them completely, but they had no choice. They needed to hide, even for a moment, to plan their next move. The figure on the beach paused, almost as if it knew they were watching from behind the rock. The air was electric with tension, each breath heavy with fear. He looked at Mom, her eyes wide, wet from rain and tears, and whispered, "We need to keep moving. We can't stay here." She nodded, fear and determination mixing in her expression. They waited for a moment, the storm masking every other sound, then ran, slipping through the wet sand as quietly as they could toward the faint light of the distant road. Behind them, the shadow moved again, keeping pace, never breaking contact, never revealing its intentions fully, but its presence was a constant threat. The house loomed behind them, dark and silent now, but he knew it was not truly empty. The notes, the whispers, the shadows, it all connected back to that place, to the beach house that had once been a haven, and the figure on the beach. It was only the beginning. He could feel it in the pit of his stomach. A certainty that danger was closing in, that the storm was no longer just a storm, which a curtain hiding something deadly, something that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. They ran further along the beach, toward the faint light, rain soaking their faces, wind tearing at their clothes. Every step carried the fear that the figure would appear in front of them, blocking their escape, revealing the threat fully. Each wave crashing against the shore sounded like a warning echoing through the night. And then, as they rounded a bend, they saw another note pinned to a piece of driftwood, fluttering violently in the wind. He picked it up, hands shaking, and read the words scrawled hastily. "You cannot run from what you have done. It's coming." Panic surged through him. The figure was no longer a distant threat, was near, patient, relentless. And the storm seemed to be helping it, masking its movements. Mom whispered, almost sobbing, "Who is doing this? Why us?" He could not answer. He only knew that the night was far from over, that the secret of the beach house had awakened forces beyond his understanding, and that they were running out of time as they moved again. The faint light of the distant road seemed to flicker and disappear, swallowed by the storm. They were not just trapped on the beach, they were trapped in a night full of shadows, whispers, and secrets that threatened to consume them. Every step they took brought them closer to an unknown fate, closer to the figure stalking them silently, closer to a truth they were not yet ready to face. And then, from the shadows behind them, a low, deliberate laugh echoed over the storm, sending chills down their spines. The figure was no longer just watching. It was playing with them. The laughter echoed in their ears, low, menacing, carried by the wind that tore through the beach like a living thing. He froze in place, heart hammering, rain soaking him to the bone. Mom clung to his arm, her small hands trembling, nails digging into his skin. "We have to keep moving," he said, voice tight with urgency. Though every instinct screamed that running might draw the figure closer, the beach stretched endlessly before them, dark and wet, the waves crashing with a relentless fury. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the sand itself was conspiring to slow them down. The storm masked everything, yet somehow made the figure's presence more terrifying. Every shadow a potential hiding place, every gust of wind a whispered threat. They moved cautiously, slipping through the wet sand toward the faint glow of the road in the distance. The figure had vanished momentarily, blending seamlessly into the storm, but the memory of the laughter burned in their minds. The note pinned to the driftwood had made it clear. Someone was orchestrating this, watching their every move, testing their fear. He kept glancing back, flashlight shaking in his hand, but the storm had swallowed the figure again. Yet he could feel it in the pit of his stomach, in the tightening of his chest, in the way the hair on his arms bristled a presence that was patient, intelligent, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Mom stumbled, slipping in the wet sand, and he grabbed her arm, steadying her. "Be careful," he whispered. She nodded, breathing hard, eyes wide with terror. And for the first time he saw a flicker of something deeper than fear, a quiet, burning determination. She had been vulnerable moments ago, but now she was awake to the danger surrounding them. "We have to reach the road," she said firmly, her voice rising above the storm. He nodded, gripping her hand tightly. Together they moved as fast as they could, sand sticking to their wet shoes, rain stinging their faces. Each crash of a wave a reminder of how exposed they were. Lightning flashed, illuminating the beach, the house behind them, and suddenly the figure. It had returned, standing closer than before, black against the sand, the long dark object still clutched in its hands. He froze, feeling the chill of panic wrap around him like ice. The figure did not move forward, but it did not need to. Its presence alone was a threat, a warning. The whispers came again, soft, almost hypnotic. "You cannot escape. You cannot hide. It's time." He swallowed hard, realizing the figure knew more than just the secret of the beach house. It knew them, their fears, every hesitation, and now it was playing with them, enjoying the terror it had created. He pulled Mom behind another driftwood log, trying to hide them even as the wind and rain soaked them completely. The figure remained in plain sight, motionless, watching, calculating. He could see a faint movement, a subtle shift in stance, a slight tilt of the head, and his stomach churned. Whoever or whatever this was, it was intelligent, deliberate, patient. They were being hunted, tested, and every moment of hesitation increased the risk. He whispered, "Mom, we have to move now. We can't stay." She nodded, shivering, teeth chattering, but ready to follow his lead. Together they ran, slipping and stumbling through the sand, toward the faint light in the distance. As they ran, another flash of lightning revealed something unexpected. A small figure standing near the tree line at the far edge of the beach. It was not the shadowy figure with the dark object, but something smaller, almost childlike. A silhouette half hidden in the rain. He blinked, unsure if his mind was playing tricks on him. Mom saw it too and gasped softly. "What? Who is that?" she whispered. He could not answer, only felt an icy dread settle deeper in his chest. The storm, the darkness, the shadows, they were all alive now, masking dangers that he could not fully see, could not fully understand. The childlike figure stepped forward slightly, and for a brief moment lightning illuminated its face. He froze. The face was familiar. Terrifyingly familiar. A name from the past flashed in his mind, one he had not thought of in years. But before he could comprehend, the storm swallowed the figure again, leaving only darkness, wind, and the sound of waves crashing mercilessly. He pulled Mom along faster now, slipping through the sand. Adrenaline surging, lungs burning, but the sense of being followed, hunted, and trapped never left him. Then a sudden, sharp sound, metal scraping against metal, odoed from behind them. He spun around, heart racing. The shadowy figure had moved closer, silently, effortlessly, the object in its hands glinting in the lightning. Its presence was terrifying, almost supernatural. The notes, the whispers, the figure, all of it connected, orchestrated. And now it was fully aware that they were trying to escape. Each step they had taken along the beach had been anticipated, every choice calculated. The weight of panic settled on him like a physical force, pressing down on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Mom gasped beside him. "We're trapped," she whispered, eyes wide, filled with a mixture of terror and disbelief. He shook his head, trying to push fear aside, but the truth was undeniable. The figure blocked their path to safety. The storm raged, masking everything, yet somehow emphasizing the presence of the threat. Every sound, the wind, the waves, the crashing rain felt orchestrated, synchronized with the heartbeat of the unknown pursuer. And then, from somewhere deep within the storm, another note flitted across the sand, caught by the wind and landing at his feet. He picked it up, hands shaking violently. The words were simple, cruel, and deliberate. Running only makes it worse. Face it. His stomach twisted. The figure on the beach, the whispers, the notes, they were all part of a single, terrifying mind. One that had observed them, studied them, and now manipulated them. The storm was no longer just a storm. It was a stage, a weapon, a cover for the unknown threat. He looked at Mom, her eyes wide, face pale and soaked with rain, and knew that the night would demand courage, choices, and confrontations they were not ready for. And then, in the distance, a faint light flickered again, closer this time. A possible escape, away off the beach. He gripped Mom's hand tighter, nodding. "We have to reach it," he said firmly. But as they ran toward it, the shadowy figure raised the dark object slowly, deliberately, and the wind carried another soft, chilling whisper. "You cannot hide from me." The faint light in the distance seemed like a beacon of hope, but every step toward it was heavy with dread. The rain pounded harder, lightning splitting the sky, illuminating the endless black sand and the relentless waves. He held Mom's hand tightly, trying to reassure her even as his own fear surged like a tidal wave. Each step felt like running through quicksand, dragging him closer to the unknown, closer to the figure that seemed to anticipate every movement. Behind them, the house loomed like a dark, silent sentinel, windows flickering with strange shadows that seemed alive. The storm was no longer just weather, it was part of the terror, hiding dangers, whispering threats, and pressing down on them from all sides. The shadowy figure remained motionless for a moment, watching them. Then, with a sudden fluidity that made his heart leap into his throat, it started moving closer, effortlessly, silently across the wet sand. The dark object in its hand reflected the lightning in brief, harsh flashes, and he realized it was not just a weapon, it was a signal, a warning, a promise of danger. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to run faster, pulling Mom along, slipping in the sand, their soaked clothes heavy and clinging. Mom's breath came in short, sharp gasps. "Kay?" And he could feel her panic mixing with his own. A shared terror that made every heartbeat louder than the storm itself. The faint light ahead flickered again. It was close now, just a few 100 feet away, and his mind raced. Was it a car, a house, a stranger's window? He had no way of knowing, no way to be sure if it was safety or another trap. Lightning flashed, and for a brief moment he saw the figure clearly, a tall, posing silhouette, face still hidden in shadows, moving with an unnerving calm. The dark object in its hands gleamed with menace. He realized with a cold certainty that the figure had been planning this encounter, that every step they had taken had been anticipated. And now there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to turn. Mom stumbled again, and he grabbed her arm, steadying her. "We're almost there." "Keep going," he urged, voice low but firm. She nodded, fear mixed with determination shining in her eyes. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was deafening. Yet he could hear it, the soft, deliberate crunch of footsteps behind them, closing in. Not the wind, not the storm. Footsteps. Someone or something was following them, silent yet precise, measuring every step, waiting for the perfect moment. The realization sent a shiver down his spine, freezing him for a heartbeat before adrenaline forced him to move again. The figure's presence grew stronger, almost tangible, pressing on him like a weight. It did not speak, yet the whisper carried on the wind. "There's no escape." His mind reeled, trying to process what was happening, trying to remember if there had been signs before. Anything that could explain the terrifying intelligence behind this. The notes, the whispers, the shadows, they were connected. Everything led back to the secret he had tried to hide, the choice to sell the beach house. He had not just awakened curiosity or anger, he had awakened obsession, okay? And now it stalked them, relentless, patient, and frighteningly clever. The faint light flickered again. Relief surged, only to be replaced immediately by doubt. As they neared it, he realized the light was not stationary. It moved slightly, as though guiding them, teasing them. He quickened his pace, pulling Mom along, praying it was real. Then a sudden flash of lightning revealed another horrifying detail. The shadowy figure had split into two. One remained where it had been, on the beach, while another appeared behind them. Closer, moving silently, cutting off any retreat. His stomach churned. They were trapped between two threats. The storm masking movements, hiding intentions, and forcing them to make split-second decisions with life-or-death consequences. Mom gasped, clinging to his arm. We can't escape," she whispered, fear and despair mixed with tears streaming down her face. He shook his head, trying to steady himself, trying to calm both of them, but the truth was undeniable. They were caught in a deadly trap, the storm acting as a cloak for the danger. The notes, the whispers, and the relentless figure closing in. Every choice seemed wrong, every hesitation deadly. Then, without warning, the closer figure stepped into the flickering light. The dark object was raised, reflecting the lightning like a blade, sharp and deliberate. The whisper came again, this time clear, echoing through the storm. Face what you've done. His heart skipped a beat. He realized, in a cold, sinking way, that this was not just about the house or the sale, it was personal. The figure knew him, knew the secret, and now it wanted him to confront it. The storm, the shadows, the beach. The night they were all part of a stage set for a reckoning. He gripped Mom's hand tighter, feeling the weight of her fear, her trust, her vulnerability. We have to confront it, he said, voice trembling but firm. She nodded, tears mixing with the rain on her face, and for the first time a spark of courage flashed in her eyes. Together they stepped forward into the open sand, toward the figure. Every step was heavy, every heartbeat loud, every breath sharp and cold. The storm raged, masking the danger, yet amplifying it. And he felt a cold certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Lightning struck again, illuminating the figure fully for a terrifying moment. And then, a voice low, deliberate, and unmistakably familiar cut through the storm. You thought you could hide your secret, but now it's time to pay. The storm roared around them, wind tearing at clothes, rain stinging faces, waves crashing violently against the shore. Yet in the chaos, time seemed to slow as he and Mom faced the two figures blocking the path. One stood a few feet ahead, dark and tall, the object in its hands glinting menacingly with each flash of lightning. The other lingered behind them, silent, a shadow that seemed to press into them, reducing the world to only three things: the storm, the figures, and their own fear. Every heartbeat was deafening, every breath a struggle, and each step forward felt like walking deeper into a trap that had been set long before they arrived on the beach. He tightened his grip on Mom's hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling, yet she clung to him with a desperate determination. We have to face it, he whispered, though even he felt the weight of the words. They stepped forward cautiously, wet sand squelching beneath their feet, lightning illuminating the figures in brief, harsh flashes. The closer figure raised the dark object slightly, then slowly lowered it, a deliberate motion that was meant to unsettle. The other figure remained silent, its presence oppressive, as if the air itself had grown heavy with its attention. The storm made sound and movement unpredictable, masking threats and turning shadows into weapons. A voice, low and deliberate, broke through the roar of the storm. It was familiar, chillingly familiar, and it pierced through his mind like a blade. You thought the secret could stay buried, but it never will. His stomach twisted, a cold dread settling in. The voice was not just threatening, it carried knowledge, accusation, history. The figures were no longer simply stalkers or intruders. They were embodiments of the consequences of the choice he had made, consequences he had not fully understood until now. Mom's grip on his arm tightened. Who are they?" she whispered, fear choking her voice. He could not answer. All he could do was move forward, each step a battle against terror. Lightning flashed again, revealing more detail. The closer figure's face was partially visible in the brief light, and he gasped. It was someone from the past, someone connected to the beach house, connected to the secret he had tried so desperately to hide. Memories flashed unbidden, childhood incidents, hushed conversations, warnings ignored. The dark object in the figure's hand seemed less a weapon and more a tool of retribution, symbol of the reckoning that had been waiting for him. He felt the weight of every decision he had ever made pressing down, knowing that nothing could undo the fear, the suspense, the danger that had been awakened. The figure behind them shifted slightly, and he realized that their escape route, the faint light, the distant road, was now effectively blocked. Every choice carried risk, and hesitation could mean disaster. He felt panic rising, a cold, choking sensation in his chest, and yet he knew they could not stand still. Mom's voice broke through the storm again, trembling but firm. We can't run forever." He nodded, swallowing hard, and took a deep breath. "We have to confront them. We have to face this," he said. Her eyes met his, and in that instant, fear and courage intertwined, forming a fragile resolve. The figure in front stepped closer, rain plastering their hair to their face, shadows twisting with each movement. The voice spoke again, soft but venomous. "You can't hide from what you've done. It will find you no matter where you go." Each word felt like a physical blow, carrying the weight of accusation and the promise of danger. He wanted to respond, to plead, to explain, but the storm drowned everything except the voice, the presence, the fear. Mom pressed closer to him, whispering, "Do something. Say something." But he felt paralyzed, caught between the past and the present, the storm and the threat, unsure of how to act. Then lightning illuminated the dark object fully. It was not just a weapon, it was something familiar, something that belonged to the house, to the history of the secret. Recognition hit him hard, and his mind raced. Whoever had come to the beach, whoever had orchestrated the notes, the whispers, the shadows, they were deeply connected to everything that had happened before, and now standing before them. They demanded acknowledgement, confrontation, and perhaps even punishment. The storm's roar seemed to echo their intentions, turning the night into a living, breathing entity that pressed down on them, suffocating, relentless. Mom's trembling fingers dug into his arm. We have to stop them," she said, voice breaking but resolute. He nodded, heart pounding, aware that they could not run any longer. The figures before them were patient, intelligent, relentless. They had been waiting, watching, and now the storm had brought them together, forcing a reckoning that could no longer be avoided. Every instinct screamed fear, but every thought whispered that courage was the only way forward. He stepped forward, and in that instant, the closer figure raised the dark object higher, pointing it toward him. The rain washed his face, stinging eyes, and lightning struck nearby, illuminating the intensity of the moment. The voice came again, low and deliberate. "It's time to face the truth." Mom gasped beside him, fear and determination blending in her expression. He took another step, hard hammering, and the storm seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself awaited what would happen next. And then, from the shadows, a sudden movement, quick, almost imperceptible, struck him blind with fear. The dark object swung, aimed not recklessly but deliberately, with precision. He froze, mind racing, unsure if it was a warning, a test, or the beginning of something far worse. The storm screamed around them, waves crashed, lightning flashed. And in that split second, he realized nothing in his life had prepared him for this confrontation. The dark object swung through the air, slicing the rain with a sharp hiss that echoed like a warning across the beach. He froze, heart hammering, mind racing with every possible scenario, each one more terrifying than the last. Mom pressed against him, trembling, wet hair plastered to her face, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. The figure stood with deliberate stillness, patience carved into every movement. As if testing them, gauging their fear, waiting for them to make a mistake. The storm around them roared like a living thing. Thunder shaking the ground beneath their feet, wind whipping at their bodies, masking the chaos and amplifying the tension that gripped every nerve. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. A heavy, suffocating presence that made it hard to breathe. Every instinct screamed to run, yet the shadowy figure had cut off their escape. They were trapped on the wet black sand, exposed to the storm and the unknown. The ocean roaring at their sides, a relentless, indifferent witness. Lightning flashed, illuminating the figure fully for a terrifying instant. Tall, silent, relentless, and familiar. The dark object glinted in the light, revealing a shape he recognized, a tool that had once been ordinary, now transformed into an instrument of fear, symbolizing the reckoning that had been waiting all along. Mom whispered, voice trembling but defiant, "We can't let it. We can't let them win." He nodded, though fear clawed at his chest. They had no weapons, no plan, only each other and the fragile courage that flickered like a candle in the storm. They stepped forward together, hearts pounding, each footstep heavy in the sand, each breath sharp and cold. The closer figure raised the object higher, the tip catching the lightning like a threat suspended in time. The other figure lingered behind, silent, like a shadow of judgment, pressing the moment into unbearable tension. And then the voice came again, low and deliberate. "You cannot escape what you have done." The words cut through the storm, sharper than the wind, heavier than the rain, and he felt the full weight of guilt, fear, and responsibility crush him. Memories of the house, of the sale, of every choice that led to this night flashed before his eyes. He realized the truth, the storm, the notes, the whispers. The figures, they were all consequences, manifestations of a secret that could not be hidden, a truth that demanded reckoning. He swallowed hard, trying to focus, trying to find courage in the swirling chaos. In the pounding rain, in the merciless waves, Mom's grip tightened on his arm. "We have to face it. We have no other choice," she said, voice rising above the roar of the storm. He nodded, and together they stepped forward, hearts hammering in unison, feet slipping in the sand. The closer figure advanced slowly, deliberately, forcing them to stop, each step measured and terrifying. He could feel the eyes of the figure on them piercing, knowing, a predator aware of its prey. The dark object reflected another flash of lightning, and for a moment, he thought he could see the face behind it, someone he had known. Someone who understood the secret and someone whose anger had festered long and deep. Then, as if the storm itself had conspired to create a pause in the terror, the figure spoke a single chilling word. "Confess." His mind raced. Confess? To whom? To the storm? To the figures. To the truth itself. Every memory, every lie, every choice he had made felt exposed, raw, vulnerable. He looked at Mom, whose eyes mirrored his own fear but also held determination. "We can't hide," she said softly. "We have to tell them, or it will never stop." He nodded, feeling the weight of the night pressing down. The storm screaming around them, the shadowy figures waiting, patient, relentless. He opened his mouth, ready to speak, when suddenly the figure behind them moved. Faster than he could anticipate, it stepped into the faint light of the lightning, revealing a face, another familiar, haunting face connected to the house, connected to the secret. He gasped, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Mom clutched his arm tightly, whispering, "Who? Who are they?" But the voice of the closer figure drowned her question. Low and deliberate, "It's time to pay the price." The dark object swung again, slicing the air, and he realized with a cold certainty that this was no longer a warning hit, was the beginning of reckoning. Lightning struck near the water's edge, blinding for a second, and in that flash, he saw movement from the shadows, the house, the sand. Even the storm itself seemed to stir with awareness. The figures had orchestrated everything, and now the stage was set for the final confrontation. There was no road to safety, no path to escape, only the storm, the beach, and the figures who had come to deliver judgment. He swallowed hard, fear, guilt, and adrenaline mingling, and stepped forward, preparing to speak, to confess, to confront whatever was waiting. And just as his lips parted, the closer figure lunged forward, object raised, moving with terrifying speed. He grabbed Mom's hand, pulling her back instinctively. Sand sprang around them, rain blinding their eyes. The world narrowed to a single heartbeat, a single choice: survive, or be consumed by the consequences of the secret that had awakened this night of terror. The storm roared around them like a living thing, lightning splitting the sky, rain hammering down in sheets, waves crashing violently against the black sand. He clutched Mom's hand tightly, heart pounding in his chest like a drum. The dark object swung toward them, a blur in the flashes of lightning, and he ducked instinctively, feeling the wind rush past his face as the figure struck where they had stood moments before. Mom screamed and he grabbed her, pulling her backward, slipping in the wet sand. The world had narrowed to only this: the storm, the figures, and the desperate struggle to survive. In the brief lightning flashes, he could see the faces of the figures clearly. Both were people from his past, people connected to the beach house, to the secret he had tried to hide. One was a childhood friend he had betrayed years ago, and the other was the friend's sibling, someone he had wronged unknowingly. The notes, the whispers, the shadows, they had all been orchestrated by them. A plan of revenge that had been patient, deliberate, and terrifyingly clever. Everything made sense now. The warnings, the storm, the haunting presence, the relentless pursuit. They had been preparing for this moment for years, waiting for him to finally face the truth. Mom's hand trembled in his, and he realized the depth of her fear and trust. "We can't hide," she said softly, voice trembling. "We have to tell them the truth." He nodded, swallowing hard. The dark object was raised again, and he stepped forward, voice loud enough to carry over the storm. "I was wrong," he shouted. "I should have told you. I should have been honest." The figures paused, momentarily still, listening. The storm seemed to hold its breath, the wind less sharp, the rain lighter, as if the world itself waited for the confession. He took a deep breath, feeling every word leave his mouth like a release of fear and guilt. "The beach house. I sold it. I didn't think it would matter, but I was wrong. I should have protected what was important to all of us. I'm sorry." Mom's tears mixed with the rain on her face, and for the first time that night he felt a fragile relief. The figures lowered the object slightly, their expressions unreadable in the flashes of lightning. They had sought fear, revenge, and confessioning. Now they've had it. A long moment passed. The storm continued, waves crashing and wind howling, but the figures did not move. Slowly, deliberately, they took a step back, nodding slightly, acknowledging the confession, acknowledging the truth he had finally spoken. The tension began to lift, replaced by exhaustion and relief, mingled with the realization that this night of terror, though terrifying, had not ended in destruction. The storm had hidden danger, the shadows had amplified fear, and the whispers had guided him, but truth had power. Confession had diffused part of the threat. Mom pulled him close, whispering, "It's over. We're alive." He held her tightly, rain mixing with tears, heart still racing, but a sense of calm finally creeping over him. The figures retreated further into the shadows, disappearing into the darkness and storm, leaving only the echo of their presence and the lesson of the night. The beach house loomed behind them, dark but now silent, its secrets acknowledged, its shadows fading. They were wet, exhausted, terrified, but alive. And for the first time since the night began, he felt the weight lift from his chest. Lightning flashed one last time, illuminating the sand, the waves, and the path ahead. He realized that some secrets, though dangerous, could be faced, could be confessed, and could allow survival and understanding. The storm would pass, the night would end, and the dawn would bring clarity. He held Mom's hand, looking at the faint light of the distant road, feeling a fragile hope that they would finally escape the shadow of fear, and live to tell the story as they walked slowly toward safety. The notes and whispers no longer haunted them, but the lessons remained. The beach house had tested them, the storm had tried to break them, the figures had demanded truth, and in facing it, they had survived. He looked at Mom and smiled faintly, rain dripping from his hair. "We made it," he said softly. And in that moment, the terror of the night began to dissolve into relief, into understanding, into a story they would remember forever. They stepped off the sand and onto the first dry ground, exhausted but alive, and he realized the power of courage, honesty, and facing consequences head on. The storm began to fade, waves still crashing, wind still howling, but the danger had passed. They walked together toward the safety of home, knowing that the night had changed them, had tested them, and had reminded them of what truly mattered: truth, love, and survival. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every choice we make has consequences, and facing them with courage can change the outcome, even in the darkest storms.